Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Today is Thursday, December the 4th, a special live edition of the podcast. I'm Zach Ewing along with Reed Darcy and Koki Riley in our LSU Sports Insider studios here in Baton Rouge. And we're talking National Signing Day, a National Signing Day that was more chaotic than most. It was more interesting than most, all because Lane Kiffin just got hired as LSU's coach. He was announced on Monday. By Wednesday, he had to keep together as much of this class as he could. Koki, you've been following it as closely as anybody. We're going to talk about how he did, some of the things we're still waiting on, and basically how it all came together. But I think chaotic is the right word for it, right?
Yeah, that's to say the least right now, especially with the fact that there's technically two, but really one major five-star that still hasn't signed yet with LSU, despite the fact that they're still committed. That man is Lamar Brown. He's number 2 overall player in the country. He met with Lane Kiffin almost the moment that Lane Kiffin landed here at LSU, but he still wasn't signed yet. And a lot of it has to do with just the chaos of the coaching staff, and we're going to get into a lot of that as well. That's the name to watch at the moment, but there was a whole bunch of other stuff going on. I mean, they signed technically 10, really 11 players. Richard Anderson's about to get signed. Matt Moscone had a report out this morning that his paperwork, there was some sort of clerical error and his paperwork's going to get figured out. That's the other 5-star that I mentioned earlier. So I expect there to be at least 11 by the end of today. And then by the end of Friday, up to 15 or 16. We'll see. They're fighting off a couple potential flips. They're trying to flip a couple other players. So we can get all into that in a moment here.
A lot of moving pieces. It was always going to be chaotic because LSU went through a coaching change. You get coaching staff out, you basically swap over the entire offensive staff. And what's really holding things up, I think, is the fact that Lane Kiffin doesn't really have any defensive coaches finalized, hired yet. So that's another thing, another wrench that's kind of gotten thrown in here for the signing period. It's Wednesday to Friday when kids can sign, and then they can sign again in February if they want to. So a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts, a lot of kind of chaos, and that's kind of natural to expect that from when you have your new coach getting hired a couple days before the signing period starts.
Right. Saying it's chaotic is not a knock on Lane Kiffin or his staff. That is necessary just look at the calendar. And we've been talking about this for a long period of time with this coaching search. Whoever came in was going to have to hit the ground running. I mean, literally, as you said, Koki, in the case of Lane Kiffin, now stroke of luck for him, or maybe one reason why you take the job, you have a school like U High on your campus so that you can have their 5-star recruit in your office within 10 minutes of when you unlock the door for the first time. But it was going to be chaotic. The math is they had 15 players committed, I believe, before Lane Kiffin came aboard. 3 of them left. Now, whether that's because they decided they weren't sure about Lane Kiffin or if Lane Kiffin said, maybe we can do better and told them to move on, we're not sure. So 3 moved on. They brought in 4, at least verbal commitments. And so that number is at 16. Only 11 of those, as you say, have signed, or 10 of them plus Richard Anderson, who I know fans are going to be nervous until that's official, but it does look like he's on board. And it's just kind of been chaos. I think it's turned out okay for LSU, though. Like it seems like I believe they have 3 top 100 prospects. This was never going to be your elite, best ever recruiting class because of the coaching situation. It just seems like they've kind of held serve, though.
Yeah, and there's still the potential for more. I think now's probably a good time to sort of talk about the potential flips they have on the table here. Jace Matthews, he's a 5-star receiver, and at least according to On3, 4 stars and 247 Sports' rankings. He's not signed until Friday because LSU's making a push for him, and he's an Auburn commit. Landon Duckworth, they made a really strong push at him. He's the South Carolina quarterback commit, top 10 quarterback in the country. Looked like for a second that he was going to come to LSU, then announced this morning that he's going to be signing with South Carolina either way. And I think a lot of these flips have a lot to do with just, the appeal of the new coaching staff, the appeal of just the allure of LSU, and the fact that as our Wilson Alexander reported, I mean, they have a $25 to $30 million NIL budget. If you include that with the revenue share, that includes the revenue share, but that's still a much higher number than most teams in the country, almost everybody in the country. So it kind of gives you an idea that they're going to be making big swings with a lot of these recruits at the last second here, and try to lock stuff up. So if they're doing this now and they've been in the door for 72 to however many hours, 96 hours, then what is it going to look like when they have an entire year to develop relationships with these kids, with the LSU brand and with the LSU money?
But nothing matters more in the immediate for Lane Kiffin and his staff than Lamar Brown and Richard Anderson, right?
Right.
Lane Kiffin is going to have to, just like any other LSU coach, is going to have to recruit Louisiana. Richard Anderson goes to Edna Carr. He's from New Orleans. Lamar Brown, like you said, goes to U-High. He's from Baton Rouge. You have to get those two guys, the two 5-stars, the two defensive linemen, two best players in Louisiana. These are the guys that you're talking about when you talk about the appeal of a job like LSU, because you have these guys committed to LSU. They want to come to LSU. Lane Kiffin and his staff have to give them the opportunity to go to LSU and have to give them the chance to go to LSU. So Richard Anderson, on Tuesday night, we got some news. On 3 reported that they were withholding their signatures. They were waiting to sign until Kiffin kind of finalized his staff. Richard Anderson kind of reversed course on that decision, but we're still waiting on Lamar Brown. He could sign this week.
He could sign today.
He could sign today. We're not sure. We're just waiting on him. He could also sign in February. I think what's holding things up is, one, the status of Blake Baker, and is he going to be LSU's defensive coordinator next year? And 2, the status of Frank Wilson. Frank Wilson was a key recruiter for a lot of these guys, especially the ones in the New Orleans area. He's got great relationships with those kids and their families. They want to know if he's going to be a part of Lane Kiffin's staff, I think, before they sign the dotted line. And they also want to know what the defensive staff looks like. Will Blake Baker be there? Will he not be there? He's trying to decide if he's going to be a head coach next year. So he's really the first domino that needs to fall. And then some of these kids might, decide to sign the dotted line.
So let's go through some of these issues one by one. First, need to get some housekeeping out of the way. The LSU Sports Insider is brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. You can command the road in a Cadillac where luxury, power, and presence come together. Experience it today at Jerry Lane Cadillac. So check them out. The question on the screen right now is, how would you grade Lane Kiffin's first recruiting class? It almost has to be incomplete. We can grade the initial effort. We can say it's a B or whatever for keeping most of the stuff together. But until we know what happens with Anderson, it looks like it's going to work out fine, but also with Brown. And then until we know what happens with other potential flips, it's hard to say.
Yeah. Deuce Gerald's who's the next biggest name on the board outside of those two, could potentially flip to Georgia Tech or Ole Miss. Apparently,
he's signing on Friday.
Yeah, but he's signing on Friday. Again, there's like Trent Henderson. He's like an edge rusher, another top 100 recruit. He's not signing until Friday. So there's no indication that Henderson's flipping, and there's really no indication that Brown's flipping to another school. Another school that really hasn't popped up, at least according to some of the reporting, as like a real threat for Brown's signature. The delay, again, is just trying to figure out exactly what this coaching staff is going to look like, because I don't think this is a money thing. We talk about how money delays a lot of these signings on signing day, but I don't think that has to do with it at all in this situation. I think it's everything to do with the coaching staff, as Reed pointed out, and it's getting Baker involved. And if you get Blake Baker signed in, then that probably means that Corey Raymond's going to stay. That probably means that there's a decent chance that Kyle Williams is going to stay as a D-line coach. When you're Lane Kiffin's defensive coordinator, you get a lot of say over what's going on with the defense. And maybe that could be an appeal for Baker to stay instead of taking the Tulane or Memphis job, but we'll see.
It seems to me that if Brown signs in the early period, it's going to be with LSU.
Yes.
The bad news for LSU would be if he says, "Oh, I'm going to wait till February," because at that point, you're giving other schools 2 months to come in and make their offer and make their pitch and say, "Hey, look who you could play for here." Now, the tricky part about that, of course, as you guys say, is Blake Baker, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's talk just for a minute about the importance of these guys, not just on the field, because they're both star defensive linemen. I mean, just look at Richard Anderson walk into a room. I mean, the guy is, I think you called him a man, Koki. He's a boy by age, but he is a man by size. He is a big dude already. And like, that's how you win in the SEC. You win in the trenches. We talked a lot about how these guys are so important to get for a school like LSU, because any school that's successful in the SEC, look at the 5 teams who are probably making the college football playoff. They all have big time defensive lines. LSU was fine there this year, I think, but it's just a place where you can always use guys like this.
Didn't really have much of a pass rush, a 4-man pass rush. They couldn't really pressure quarterbacks with 4, and that was the biggest issue with LSU's defense this year. And they still had a very good defense despite not having that. But if you want to upgrade this defense to the next level, you need more talent in terms of from a pass rushing sense in the trenches. They could stop the run decently up front. They were better than they were the last 2 years up front, I think, and it has steadily improved. But they need a defensive line coach who's going to stay there for more than 1 year, first of all. And second of all, they need more edge rush, pass rushing talent on this team. And I mean, Henderson and Brown and Richard Anderson, like those guys go a long way in potentially getting that for your team.
If Lamar Brown signs with LSU, we haven't really seen too much of this so far, but if he signs with LSU, like, he is one of the most highly rated recruits that LSU has ever signed. He will be if LSU signed. Like, he is a Leonard Fournette type recruit. If you look at the 247 kind of ratings there, like that's how big time of a recruit he is. So Lane Kiffin, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that he can really afford to miss out on this guy, with his first swing. College football is different now. There's the portal that you can have to supplement, what you might be missing from a recruiting class. But the most important thing for him is just keeping the class intact as best you can, making sure you get the top 2 guys from Louisiana, and then building it out from there. So maybe you get 15 to 16 signees, and that's perfectly fine to get a B+ or an A- and keep things moving along, because this all happened very, very quickly, and so a B+ A- effort is more than acceptable here for Lane Kiffin first go round.
And again, like, whatever they do with this class isn't going to be as important for 2026 as what they do next month in the portal.
Yes.
Like, that's going to be critical.
And retaining the players already on the roster.
Like DJ Pickett, and there's not a ton of them, but there's a few that you definitely want to retain, like Pickett and Green and Harlem Berry. Those 3 pop to mind. Yeah.
So big picture, and we should mention this: high school recruiting. Those of you who follow college football, this. It's not nearly as important as it used to be because of the proliferation of transfers. If you can ace it in the portal, as Lane Kiffin has done at Ole Miss the last few years, the high school recruiting becomes less and less important. Having said that, you still need it. You still need to build. I would argue, especially in the trenches, you need to sort of build internally. We saw last year LSU trying to build its offensive line through the portal. Didn't really work. But this one in particular, the Isaac Brown, optically, it's just so important for Lane Kiffin.
Lamar Brown.
Thank you. You can't miss on Lamar Brown. You can't. He's the number 2 player in the nation. He literally plays football on your campus. I know you're a new coach.
Sometimes that's been harder to get the guys who play at U-High in particular, because
they want to go somewhere else.
Famously, Dylan Moses, went to Alabama. He went to U-High, and huge recruit. He went to Alabama. Now his little brother's at LSU now, Keelan Moses. But those guys who go to U-High, who basically have grown up on LSU's campus, I think there's a tendency to think that, they kind of want to branch out a little bit and get exposed to a different part of the country now than just staying in the same spot they literally grew up their whole life. But every kid is different. And Lamar Brown, by all accounts, really, really wants to come to LSU. He committed over the summer, and we've seen him at pretty much every single home game.
I think so. Yeah.
He's been in the student section, Zach. Like, he's been a few rows into the student section, like, watching these games. So I think he really
on the sideline watching them warm up.
Right.
Yeah.
He really wants to come to LSU.
Like, almost in the drills himself, like almost as like an injured player.
I guess that he's at U-High. I mean, although that optically, again, I think that matters, but it's the fact that he was already committed. He clearly is into LSU. when we talk about grading how Lane Kiffin did in his first national signing day, like you grade with a curve because of the timeline. You got to get him if you're going to get a good grade on this.
Yeah.
If you lost Lamar Brown,
it's not because of want and it's not because of money. Again, what it has to deal with is something that he can't control, which is the defensive coaching staff and Blake Baker's future.
Let's get into that then, because that is the domino. I mean, is it as easy to say that if Blake Baker stays, Lamar Brown signs?
I'm like 90% sure. Well, I don't want to say that. I don't want to go that far, because I think Frank Wilson is a big piece, is also the other big piece in this that we haven't really mentioned, and that he was, and it was, it was him. It was Frank who, sort of kept this class together and really pitched to Richard Anderson and Lamar Brown in the first place.
Well, we can pass along some info that Wilson gave us last night. He said that one of the main hangups is the D-line coach at LSU, Kyle Williams. Koki mentioned that LSU hasn't had a D-line coach stick around for more than a year since 2015 or whatever. That's something that's hanging on this, because Blake Baker still needs to make his decision. We know that Blake Baker interviewed for the Tulane job on Monday. We don't know if he's been offered the Tulane job, but we do know that he's weighing, pursuing head coaching jobs versus staying LSU's defensive coordinator. We know that Lane Kiffin wants to keep him around. And I'd imagine if Blake Baker stays, then the rest of his staff stays. And so that includes Kyle Williams. If you're also Lamar Brown, you're not really in any kind of rush. You're not going to be enrolling early on campus. He's not going to be on campus by December and January for bowl practices. He's not going to be on campus until the summer. So, there's really no rush to make this decision this week. He could sign in February. Obviously, that'd be bad news for LSU, but it's just like he's trying to just make sure that this situation is the one that he signed up for to begin with, I think, before he signs. And on top of all of that, UI has a playoff game on Friday for them to go to a state championship. So the timing of all this kind of doesn't really work out very well for anybody. I'm trying to think who this works out for.
No, nobody.
The kids, other coaches looking to poach Lamar Brown. That's about it.
The kids are put in a really difficult position here with the early signing window. Lamar Brown, especially when there's a coaching change and he's got playoff games and all this to worry about, it puts him in a little bit of a difficult spot.
And speaking of the timing of it, again, NOLA.com reporting, Gary Smith, who covers Tulane for us, has said that Tulane likely will not name a head coach until after they play in the American Conference Championship game tomorrow night down in New Orleans. So if that is the case, obviously early signing period ends Friday. Blake Baker may not know. Now they may give him a hint as to, hey, you should stick around, or you're out of the running. We're not considering you anymore.
I'm deciding to stick around. That could also be the case.
He could just decide that he wants to be LSU's DC for another year or two.
Yeah.
But Blake Baker played at Tulane. I mean, he obviously has an emotional attachment to the place. It feels like he wants that job. He's going to have to wait potentially until after the signing period ends to know if he got it. So that's the other complicating factor of all of this. And it's just all very Louisiana. It's all very chaotic. I mean, it's a Louisiana football story is what it is.
It's not necessarily because of Louisiana that there's chaos. It's because of the
calendar. It just happens to be two Louisiana schools we're talking about.
Yeah, of course, though. But of course, it's always chaos in Louisiana for one reason or another.
Calendar doesn't make much sense, and I think there's been a lot of that discussion in the past couple of weeks. I think it's a different podcast, but I'm not sure the calendar serves anybody. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out who this is actually good for.
But there's two things. One thing that you can fix, and another thing that I don't think you really can. One thing you can fix is to have the government come in and try to make like systemic changes to the sport. And the other thing that I don't think you can really fix when it comes to the calendar specifically, though, I don't think you can really fix it because of the way the school system works.
Yeah, the academic calendar.
The academic calendar just screws everything up too much to the point where it's like, all right, we want to, let's say,
you can't have transfers coming in February.
Let's say the portal in February. Well, you can't do that because the school starts. Well, school will have started by then. Like they pushed to January. It's the latest they could have done it.
I think it's also important to note that the coaches were the ones who wanted the calendar this way,
who wanted the early signing window in December so that they could get as much of their roster in place as they can for spring practice.
And then I believe they also wanted the portal in January, correct?
Yes.
So it's the coaches who have pushed for this change and now they're sort of reaping what they
complaining
sowed.
about
Yeah.
it.
So
now it's also like it's ADs and conferences being like, hey, let's expand the playoff and
that is true.
and create this situation where the coaches have to like choose whether to stay with a playoff team or go to LSU.
Making it up
So-
as we go along.
You're right, Reed. That's a whole nother podcast, and one we should
Yeah,
probably
it
do
is.
at some
Yeah.
point. But that is the situation that Lane Kiffin is dealing with. That's the situation that Blake Baker and by extension Lamar Brown is dealing with. So these guys have to. We're going to see what happens here by the end of the week, both with Blake Baker and then perhaps by extension with Lamar Brown. Our staffing update was brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. With that said, we are going to take a break. We are going to hear from our sponsors when we come back. A little more Lane Kiffin discussion, some more stuff coming out of Ole Miss. They're not real happy with him up in Oxford. We knew that, but some more information coming out. We'll also have a quick LSU basketball update for happier things right after this.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional healthcare for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You give me love.
Did they ask you to do the commercial too?
Yeah, but they just gave me one line.
Bet like a Caesar. Like we're gonna sit here and we're gonna tell them how Caesar's Sportsbook is just so easy to use that you can watch and bet thousands of sports events, even some NFL games.
They'll probably show us betting on our favourite players and teams at all the Vegas hotspots too.
Like we have time for that montage.
I told him I couldn't do it.
They couldn't afford me.
I think the biggest thing that separates us is our people. We have a really amazing staff that really care about their customers, really care about our product. At Jerry Lane Cadillac, we value trust and transparency above all else. We have a little bit of something for everyone. So whether it be the 2025 Escalade, any of the smaller crossover vehicles, the XT4, 5, and 6, we've also got a wide variety of new EVs, including the 2025 electric Escalade IQ. I think the product lineup right now is the best that it's ever been in Cadillac.
Just in the first few days of his tenure. I want to go big picture for a second, guys. And there's more stories coming out of Ole Miss about what Lane Kiffin did and how what he said in his press conference on Monday was inaccurate about when he was told that he wasn't going to be able to coach the Rebels in the college football playoff. I don't know how much any of this matters to LSU or to its fans. It is a story that LSU probably will have to at least deal with on the periphery, maybe even for an entire season.
So you're telling me there's going to be more drama at LSU?
Yeah.
Never.
What school could handle it better than LSU,
Yeah,
right?
it's messy. You know, it's Lane Kiffin made an unprecedented decision in the history of college football. You know, no coach has ever walked away from a college football playoff team or a team that is very much in play for a national title to take another job, especially at a place like, his school's one of its top rivals. So we're in uncharted territory. And I think, what Ole Miss athletic director Keith Carter, he went on a show, I'm forgetting the name of the show, I apologize, yesterday, and he said that, the main thing that he said was that Lane Kiffin knew for weeks that the school was not going to let him coach in the playoff, but it sounds like he spent the last couple of weeks of this process really trying to figure out a way to do both, to take the LSU job and to coach Ole Miss in the playoff. And he said that he didn't find out for sure that he wasn't going to be coaching in the playoff until right before he hopped on the plane to Baton Rouge. The AD is disputing that. He's saying that we made this clear to him like weeks before Koki that he took the job, and now players are also, you know, chiming in on social media saying that, you know, they didn't ask him to stay like he said he said they did in the statement that he put out on Sunday as he was flying to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole ton else to add outside of what Reed just said. Because again, this is an Ole Miss story. This isn't really an LSU story. For LSU, you're just happy to get a guy who's won 10 or more games for 3 straight seasons at a place that had never done that before in the SEC. So, yeah, like it's just more drama.
It is, and I think like you could easily see where, you know, Lane Kiffin was told weeks ago that he wasn't going to be able to coach the team, and then he continued to argue for it up to the last minute, and that's what he's saying is like, well, I didn't know until half an hour before because I kept asking, and even though the answer was no continually, I didn't get the final no until 30 minutes before. I mean, like
he said that he was trying to figure out ways to make it work. So I'd imagine he was trying to, I don't know, put it in writing, like say, hey, if I'm coaching this team, I can't take XYZ players or coach. I don't know how that would work. I don't, but I think that he thinks at least that he had figured out some kind of weird plan to make it work so that he could do both.
There's also like Joe Burrow that asked the other day about Lane Kiffin at a Bengals press conference, and Joe Burrow is very like not unenthusiastic about Lane Kiffin, where he kind of has this long pause and sigh when he's asked about Lane Kiffin. And then he goes, well, I think he's a good coach. And then the reporters asked him how he would feel if his coach left in the middle of the college football playoff. And Joe Burrow, who obviously is focused on the task at hand, is going, well, is Ole Miss in the playoff? And they said yes. And he goes, oh, well, yeah, that wouldn't be good. Or, you know, something to that effect. Like, it was just very awkward. And like as a LSU would love to see one of its own kind of be like, Lane Kiffin's a Tiger, let's go, you know, be a little more enthusiastic. I think Joe Burrow was just kind of caught off guard by the question. But all of this just is noise on the outside. And that's kind of what you're saying, Koki, is like, this is an Ole Miss story, or this is for the national media to berate Lane Kiffin about. I think from an LSU perspective, I'm not so sure some LSU fans don't like it. We talked about this on Tuesday. Like, Lane Kiffin can wear the black hat. LSU's cool with that role. I mean, this is like, am I wrong in saying that? Like, I almost think like, that makes him embrace it.
I mean,
more.
A lot of people would be like, well, Koki, you should care about this because Lane Kiffin's this or Lane Kiffin's that, or Lane Kiffin's evil and you need to call him out for it. Well, I think LSU fans kind of know that he likes to wear the black hat, that he likes to stir things up. And I think, as you kind of said, that LSU fans even like that to some sort of degree. LSU's okay with playing the villain. And Lane Kiffin is clearly playing, if he's not the villain, he's at least not afraid to play it. And I think they knew this already. Like, this isn't news. It is news, but it's also not news in a way, right?
The way he left certainly hurt his reputation nationally. Now, I don't think that affects his ability to recruit players or his ability to win games at LSU. It just hurts his legacy. It hurts the way people think about him. I do believe this decision will define his career, whether he wins at LSU or not. You know, it's something that I don't think he's going to ever be able to run away from. I do think it's going to follow him for quite some time because of just the unprecedented nature of it, how he was the first and hopefully, I guess, the only coach to ever do something like this. Ole Miss will never, ever, ever forgive him. So that's kind of where it's at. And none of it affects LSU's ability to win games under Lane Kiffin, but it does just affect the way that, you know, people think about him and the way that he's viewed, you know, in the totality of his career, and the way that we'll think about him 10, 15 years from now when we think about him as a coach in his career.
But like, people, I think like the big difference between this move and the Brian Kelly move, which Notre Dame was pretty close to making the 14 playoff when they weren't in. It's different situations, but Lane Kiffin's brought a lot more people from Ole Miss than Brian Kelly did from Notre Dame. And that should be noted in terms of.
And I think, speaking of transfer portal, he's going to bring more.
Yeah.
I think he's going to bring more.
Not done. Yeah.
And he's not done. And that could be players potentially. But the only person who left Notre Dame to join Brian Kelly at LSU was Jake Flint, the head strength and conditioning coach. Lane Kiffin has practically brought his entire offensive staff over to Baton Rouge, which is way more than I thought, given how messy the situation is. And it kind of comes to show you that, like, as many, though there are so many people who dislike what Lane Kiffin did and dislike Lane Kiffin in general, there's still a good amount of people who like him. And there's still going to be a very good amount of people who come and join him, whether they're players from Ole Miss or players from elsewhere in the country.
Sorry, I keep coughing. But
No, you're good.
The thing that I think I've learned in the past week and a half or so is that Lane Kiffin is just one of these guys who has a knack for eliciting strong reactions out of people, good or bad. It's just who he is. It's who he's always been, and it's who he will always continue to be. I guess he had a chance to change that narrative about himself when he was faced with this fork in the road, go to LSU or stay at Ole Miss, and he chose to take the path of being the villain, and that's who he is, and it elicits a lot of strong reactions from people on both sides of the equation. So that's just who he is as a coach. It's going to be it's going to be an adventure, I think, to cover him for however long he's at LSU.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is he kind of had this sort of, I don't want to call it a puff piece, but it was definitely a one-sided documentary, shall we say, on ESPN that they did about the many lives of Lane Kiffin and how he kind of went through each of these exits at his different stops and sort of gave his perspective on, well, this is what I was thinking and this is how it happened. And he could have probably, like, I do think that helped his reputation. And I think had he stayed at Ole Miss, people would have said, wow, Lane Kiffin really has changed. Instead, to your point, he pushed all his chips in and says, all right, I am the villain. Screw it. I'm going to LSU. Now, this is a little bit of an Animal House situation where, like, they can't do that to our pledges. Only we can do that to our pledges. This galvanizes, in my opinion, the LSU fan base. I've talked to neighbors and friends who are LSU fans. They like it. Okay. Lane Kiffin is their guy now. They may have hated him at Ole Miss, would have hated him as long as he was at Ole Miss. Now he's our problem. And now he's our guy.
As long as you win. Right. Like that's the one caveat to all of this when it comes to his support from the LSU fan base or lack thereof. It's as long as he wins, they're not going to care about the shenanigans. They're not going to care about the drama. If anything, they're going to like the drama more if it comes with the wins. Right.
There will be a swagger. I mean,
yes, they want that swagger back. And they thought they lost it under Brian Kelly. And now it's back in some sort of fashion. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's back in some sort of fashion.
If he doesn't win enough, and that's a clear distinction. Losing is different from not winning enough.
Yes.
If he doesn't win enough,
then
I think people are going to be looking back at these past 2 or 3 weeks and being like, ooh, maybe we should have seen some signs here that kind of led us to this. The only thing that matters is winning. If he wins, all of this goes away. It's kumbaya, rainbows and sunshine.
And they're going to defend him to the death.
Yes.
Yeah. They are galvanized by this. There's no doubt about it. I think that's
for now, at least.
Yeah. And we'll see. Like I said, anything in any sport is, if you win, it kind of cures everything. And that's it. And if you don't, it ruins everything. So that's the task at hand for Lane Kiffin. Now we will continue to follow that story. But speaking of winning, we need to have a quick segment about LSU's basketball teams because our men's basketball beat writer, TJ Brown, is not here, but we'll have to get him on at some point because the men's basketball team beat Boston College on the road in overtime last night. They're 8-0. They went from being one of their worst seasons ever in the SEC to possibly being an NCAA tournament team. So there's a lot to like on the men's side. Reed, you are our women's basketball beat writer, and they are, kicking butt and taking names.
Yep.
Like, as we said a couple weeks ago, now they get their first real test tonight.
Yeah, they play Duke tonight. But real quick on the men, they're playing really well. That win at Boston College was a really big one. Now
it's hard to go up the Chestnut Hill and take a win from the mighty
nobody
BC.
goes up. Well, actually, some people,
nobody. Well, actually, everybody. Well, the BC lost to Central Connecticut. Like, let's calm down a little bit here.
And they look good. All the metrics like the men's team. I think they are a potential tournament team going forward.
You didn't let me finish. I was just about to couch it. Last year around this time, the vibes were similar. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I apologize if I'm getting this wrong. They beat SMU maybe in the non-conference and started to get the ball rolling, and then everything fell apart in SEC play. But There are reasons to think that this LSU team is a little different. Dean Thomas is playing really well at point guard. He's the best point guard LSU's had since at least Xavier Pinson, maybe going even back to Tremont Waters. Now, the thing is that Jalen Reed, unfortunately, and this is awful for him and for that program, he did tear his Achilles. Last year, he tore his ACL, so this will be the second straight year he has a major injury. You feel awful for him. So that's a big blow for LSU, but going up to Boston College is pretty big for them. Now the women, on the other hand,
I'm going to correct you real quick, Reed. They beat Kansas State and Florida State last year, lost to SMU in the non-conference.
K-State,
yeah,
that's right.
But they did have some good wins earlier.
Yeah. So, so the women, on the other hand, like they do play Duke tonight, and I think we will learn a thing or two about them tonight against Duke. Now, Duke, they were preseason top 10. They made it to the Elite Eight last year. They almost snuck into the Final Four, but they have already lost 5 games this year, Koki. 5 games.
They had a very tough schedule.
Very difficult schedule, but they have losses to South Florida, West Virginia. I'm blanking on the other one, but they've also lost to South Carolina. So yeah, very difficult schedule, but 5 losses, and if they lose tonight to LSU, it'll be 6. So not the ranked, matchup, not the top 10.
Is that at Duke or is that here?
Duke,
That's at Duke. Okay.
Not the top 10 game. It could have been, but still a good team, still a road game for LSU, and still a chance to pick up a quality win.
So they're not going to score 110 again.
I mean, I'm not going to put that past them. I'm not going to say that, but I just think that it's still an opportunity for LSU to show that these first 8 games are a little bit more than smoke and mirrors, and that, hey, this is a real team they got, and this record-setting offensive start that they're on is no fluke. I think they're still trying to prove that, and tonight's their only chance in the non-conference to do that.
We are now into December, and they still have not scored double digits in a game. They've been over 100 every time.
Fewest points they've scored is 101. They did that at Tulane, and the smallest margin of victory they've had is 30 points, and that's at Tulane as well.
If they can reach those goals tonight, and they're 18.5-point favorites.
If they score 100 tonight, they might go through Christmas.
Right. They might get into SEC play, which doesn't begin till January, scoring 100 points in every game. And I mean, at that point, we're truly looking at something historic. Whether that means, are they better than South Carolina or UConn or whatever, and ultimately win a national title? I don't know.
Who knows?
But this is different than what they do to the cupcakes usually.
The thing I would encourage LSU fans is to do, well, in the non-conference when they're playing these cupcakes, is to compare them to themselves, and look at what they did in 2022 and 2023, because right now there's a lot of similarities between that team and this team. That team had 9 newcomers. This one has 8. That team started off 5 straight 100-point games to open the season. This team has already done it 8 times. That team did not play a ranked team at all in the non-conference. This team will not do that as well. And so, but if you look at the numbers, this LSU team is scoring at a higher clip than that team did 3 years ago, shooting at a higher percentage, both from the field and from 3-point range, and winning by larger margins per game than that team did 3 years ago. So this is different. I'm not sure if that means they're winning the national championship like that team did, but it certainly means that they are absolutely one of the teams that can get to the Final Four and win the title this year.
All right. Well, we will definitely shift our attention at some point to the basketball seasons, but right now there's plenty to talk about with football. And so we'll just keep the Lane train rolling and keep our train rolling. This is the LSU Sports Insider. We are brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. Our producer today was Molly Ballinger. He's Koki Riley. He's Reed Darcy. I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for joining us for this live edition, and we will see you next time.